Today on Tambora Dialogues, we'll make use of our linguistic resources of both Spanish and English to share Syra's powerful journey with you, our listeners.
You're listening to Tambora Dialogues, where we honor our rich Latin ancestral wisdom and re-nativize ourselves in the drum circle. I am your host, Erasma Veras Monticholo. Saludos, welcome to Tambora Dialogues. Today's guest on Tambora Dialogues is Syra Taveras Pineda, daughter of Magaly Pineda and Rafael Fafa Taveras, two of the Dominican Republic's most influential progressive revolutionaries. Syra, an activist in her own right, carries the torch for women's rights in the country as the Executive Director of Centro de Investigación para la Acción Femenina, which was founded by her mother. Today, como siempre, as always, we will make use of our linguistic resources in español e inglés to share Syra's powerful journey with our listeners. Syra, bienvenida. Thank you for joining the Drum Circle today.
Hola. Gracias por tenerme, Erasma. Thank you for having me here.
It's a pleasure. So, Syra, many people believe that feminism is, a recent movement that began like in the 1960s. But the truth is that this movement, advocating for women's social, political, legal, and economic rights equal to those of men, was first documented like back in France in like 1837 or something. So since then, of course, it has taken many meanings and shape. Can you share with our audience, what does feminism mean to you specifically?
Well, I was born in a feminist home. I have that privilege to be born there. That I didn't know there was a privilege until later on in my life when I really realized the difference and the struggles that women go through in the daily life, especially women in our country, in our third world developing countries. But to me, because I was always more in my house, like you said, we had two forces: Magaly in one force, this feminist woman who was a force of nature, and Fafa, who was this guy that always was giving and thinking of his country and what he can do better. And I was always more leaning towards political stuff with my dad. But then finally I realized that if we were looking for an equal society, we had to start at the bottom. And what is the bottom? Women and men are not treated equally. And if we don't change that, nothing else will change. So for me, feminism is a political movement to try to change the system from the bottom up. That's what it is. And we don't hate men.
There we go.
I don't want to be a man. I want to be this woman that can be whatever she wants to be and have all the choices that she decides without being judged or being told that she cannot do it. Basically, but it's also a movement to try to change the power relationship between men and women of color and women indigenous, or it has to change. It's not only women and men relationship. Everything in the society has to change, and that's feminism for me. It's the way of the future, and
That's right. Exactly. So, for all of those folks that think that feminism is an anti-male movement, that is not it. We're strictly looking to, as you said, be allowed the same rights as men on all platforms, right? Not just in one platform, but in many platforms. And the reality is that if you lift women, you also lift children.
yes.
Right? That's right. So it's an inclusive movement.
It is.
That's right.
You live children, you live families, you live other people in the society, because like you say, we are inclusive. We are fighting for inclusivity and diversity and respect, basically, of everybody's rights to be whatever they want to be, to live a fuller life that they can live, to have as many choices as they can have, educational, financial, religious freedom also.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we really are fighting for choice and to be able to have a different relationship. We cannot continue this way in the world. The system has to change. We cannot have so many people struggling every day just to eat, and all that is based on power relations.
That is correct. So, Sita, I have a question about your role at CPAF. Um, can you tell us a little bit about the organization as a whole, and what are the particular issues that you all are really focusing on?
CIPAF is a 42-year-old institution. So it was founded in 1979 by six women. Um, and Magaly was his executive director for almost 36 years. And it was a pioneer here in the Dominican Republic for investigating women's struggles and women problems in the Dominican Republic. The first investigation about Mujeres del Campo was done by CIPAF and still is you still have to go back to that first investigation to see some of la investigación que se hizo en ese momento. So then CIPAF moved from there to politics, and they were pushing women's participation in politics. Then, because everything was done through investigation, a través de investigaciones, they were finding ways where they needed to work. So we started with education also, helping the Ministry of Education try to introduce more language. First of all, we done it con el lenguaje inclusivo. I don't know how to say that in English.
Inclusive. No, sí, no te preocupes. Inclusive language.
Inclusive language, I guess. So we started working there. CIPAF started working with women in politics, and it was crucial for the country. CIPAF work in order to be able to have more women in political parties. Then, in the meantime, we were working too with the region in Latin America with other organizations, the feminist movement. So it's a long story. We in the last year, Magaly was mainly focusing in working with technology breach and women gender technology gap, and she formed a group of girls that we still work with. I'm happy to say that we are be able to maintain that. But she worked in order to give girls access to STEM classes and STEM careers, and really that careers have no gender. So we still work there. But right now we have four main. What we did is after she passed, we tried to to get the best of her work and try to focus on those four areas. So we work in technology, gender technology, data for better policy. We work in with the girls in STEM. We have 180. No, we have 1,800 girls. Sorry about my English is so bad.
Okay, no te preocupes.
That we're still working in the en el servicio público de educación. Tenemos 1,800 niñas con las que trabajamos todos los días. We're giving them robotics, digital technologies, communication. We always try to to give her something new for them to discover and to see beyond the reality. Then we work very hard, and that's one of my passions in politics, and try to promote women politics and participation at parity level, and not only in politics but also in government and in business and at all levels of society where we have some kind of power of decision, because I believe that either we women are part of that or we won't be able to change anything. So
Right.
we have to be at the table everywhere where there is a decision being made. So sin nosotras nada, como siempre digo,
No,
without us
claro,
nothing.
claro. Nothing gets
So
done.
yes,
No
uh,
avanzamos, right? We don't advance. Um,
no, we won't.
yeah.
Mhm.
So, Sira, I want to talk. Before I ask you the next question, I just wanted to share that during the last episode, we had Milka Santana, who is the founder of Perfecto Labs, which is an organization, kind of like a school in Yamasa, República Dominicana. And she is doing some wonderful work bringing, robotics, coding, technology, mathematics to Yamasa. And so, I want to make sure that I give her a shout out, but also share with you a little bit about her so that you have an opportunity to connect. And so offline, I'll share those details if you don't have it
That
already.
is great because I thought something in El País, creo. She's in Spain right now, right? And I saw something in one of the newspapers about her, and I have not been able to locate her. So that would be great if we are.
Mira, Tambora, we're the
That's
bridge. We're
it.
gonna make that
Yes,
connection. Esa
yes.
conexión para ustedes.
Sí, sí,
So Sira, you've been mentioning Magaly, your mom, and Fafa, your father, and so I want to ask you a little bit about them, and then I want to go dig deeper into the work that you're doing specifically with government aquí en la República Dominicana. So vamos a hablar un poquito sobre tus padres. So both of whom, Magaly Pineda and Fafa Taveras, are known throughout the Dominican Republic as leading revolutionaries who advanced social justice issues as equally fierce and committed leaders for freedom and equality. How has their legacy, their journey impacted your own journey and shaped your views on the work that needs that still needs to be done in the Dominican Republic?
well, in every way. Um, I mean, like I said, I was born into a privileged family, not because we had money, but because we had values,
Yeah.
and because we had two people that were giving it all for what they believe. And I think that is something that it gave us an edge.
Mm,
It gave us uh, another perspective of what is supposed to be éxito and what is supposed to be valuable. Um, and they were both very strong people that gave us to strength. We are all, I think we are all very much strong people that come up from the family. I get emotional still because I really, I don't go about saying I'm Magaly's and Fafa's daughter, because I believe that those are, they are, they have done so much that we are just really here try to um, project some of their work,
mhm.
and also trying to the best we can, but we still have, all of us have to continue in that path and break new path for us.
Sí, sí.
uh, See, but they're amazing people, really. uh, and the more I get to work in CIPAF, the more amazed I am at how much he was able to do, because it's not easy, and this is now, and it's still not easy. Imagine 40 years ago how difficult it was.
No, claro. I mean, and obviously, sadly, not everybody knows a lot of the history of the Dominican Republic. I mean,
Yeah.
even those of us that are here. Um, Pero, por ejemplo, todo lo que yo he leído, compartido con tu familia, like, I so much value all of their contribution y todas las cosas that they used to say, back in the 70s, back in the 80s. It's just like,
Yeah.
it's exactly the way that, it's the way forward,
Yes.
right? And they were talking about it, back then. Y aquí estamos, right? We're at that,
Yeah.
at that stage where, we can freedom dream, but we can freedom dream thanks to
Yes.
their contributions,
You
right?
know, as now working with CIPAF, we are twins. We are trying uh, to recollect all the memories, but all the things that CIPAF did.
Yeah.
And back in the 70s, 70s, early 80s, they were teaching women about pleasure. They were going in the rural communities and teaching women about taking care of their bodies and about that it's okay to have pleasure. And that was how long ago. And now people think that this is new, but they were doing it a long time ago. So
Yeah,
they were really revolutionary women and men
claro,
in rural
claro.
areas.
Sí, exacto. Y eso, esa es la realidad, que los movimientos que hemos tenido acá, la revolución, no ha sido solamente los hombres, las
No,
mujeres también han participado,
así
¿verdad?
es. Así
Han
es.
prestado, they have lent their voice, their bodies, their intellect to
Así es.
really try to shape, las cosas positivas de la República Dominicana.
Sí.
So, I wanna ask you this question about, you know, obviamente, your father was like a, physically active, right? Not just
Mhm.
intellectually, but physically active. Your mom, also Magaly, también era bien activa. Um, pero ¿cómo te ves tú, por ejemplo, like, how do you see yourself different, right? So having all of that background and all of that history, yourself and your family, ¿cómo has definido tú tu propio camino a través del esfuerzo de CIPAP?
Um, it hasn't been easy to try to uh, keep up with her thinking, but then push what you believe and what you think it should be done. Um, but I say, like, for me, politics is a very is my core. But I believe that politics without feminism and without women equal participation is not. It is not. It will not work. So there is a difference between Fafa's politics of that time, because although Fafa, I think, is one of the women that could be called a feminist, but it's still the political thinking of that time didn't take into consideration women's participation and the women role and the relationship between men and women, and um, and that was reflected that a lot of the feminists went out of the political parties, for
Mhm.
example, and right now we are not having. We have a disconnection between politics and feminism in the Dominican Republic, and and I think that is my way.
Yeah.
That's how I found my way. First of all, I have one of the main reasons for CPAF is to help develop the feminist movement. And there I have been able to give some of my knowledge from like I say, my previous life, I always say, in logistic and organization and structure. And then we are trying to help to facilitate the organization of a bigger movement
Mhm.
in order to make political change in the Dominican Republic.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So in I want to stay on this for a minute, in
mhm.
talking about, political change. So we know, like, I know, for example, that in, I think it was about 2010, January of 2010, the Dominican Republic amended its constitution to incorporate elements, regarding the advancement of gender equality, declaring that the state should promote equal rights for women and men, responsible motherhood and fatherhood, the value of domestic work, condemning, domestic and gender-based violence. Yet when I spend some time looking at the budget for the Ministry of Women, it has a much smaller budget than other ministries in the Dominican Republic. Why does that continue to be the case?
Because it's not a real change. It's just on the if you we just passed about 2 years ago a law against young ¿cómo se dice? Matrimonio infantil
Uh-huh.
or embarazo infantil, but
Child marriage.
it takes a lot more than just a law. It has to change culturally. And if you say it on paper, but you do not give the tools, and you do not give a mandate in order to change in the education area, in the salud, you will not do anything. And that's what happened in the Dominican Republic. We have so many laws, beautiful. Tenemos un cuerpo de leyes impresionante, but that doesn't translate to real work and progress and advancement. Tú puedes ver en el Ministerio de Educación, when we tried a few years ago, the Ministry of Education tried to abide by the law and try to do a gender perspective, inclusivity, education. And what happened? Then the church and some of the people that try to anti-right people, because I couldn't call them any other way. En español suena mucho mejor, anti-derechos, blocked that way. So right now in the Ministry of Education in the Dominican Republic, you cannot talk about gender equality. We cannot even work with our girls in order to try to bridge the digital gap, which is unbelievable. Because everything to them is to try to turn their kids into men haters and the LGBTQ plus community. And hasta que eso no cambie en la República Dominicana, until that changes in the Dominican Republic, until what the government and the law says and what is really happening, we will not be able to do a significant advance.
So I want to stay on that. Excuse me for a minute.
Yeah.
¿Cómo piensas, por ejemplo, like, I'll give you an example in the United States, right? I'm sure you're familiar with the 1954 Brown versus Board of Education, right? Which was all about, eliminating segregation and integrating, schools, Black and white children.
Mm-hmm.
And so similar to what you said, the law was passed. It looked great. You saw, children entering, white schools, and there was like a big show about it. But then fast forward to 2022, there's no integration. You still have Black schools and you still have white schools, and then you have, private schools, which are mostly white. So it didn't take because there wasn't enough investment at the grassroots local level to change the mindset of the people.
Yep.
Right? And so what you're saying to me resonates, ¿verdad? Porque veo lo que es la similaridad entre ese ejemplo y lo que está pasando acá. Entonces, my question really is, how do you see the integration of or the implementation of these laws, these beautiful laws, as you said, that have been passed, and then, bringing the community, el pueblo, to that understanding? What is the connection that can be made with, like, education, bringing the church into the conversation in a way that they will listen?
Mira, te voy a contestar en español.
Sí, claro.
Okay. Mira, por eso yo te decía que lo que tenemos que hacer es un cambio del sistema. Porque mientras mientras estemos de esta manera, vamos a estar haciendo reformas. Y that will be like a patching stuff and putting a patch over stuff and not doing really anything. So everything has to change, and it has to change starting from the politics and the politicians and who goes in power, quién tiene el poder. So, por eso yo insisto, y es una de mis principales trabajos y enfoques desde el CIPAF, trabajar en convertirnos en un movimiento con costo político. Que los políticos sepan que nosotras o no vamos a seguir siendo parte de su campaña para que después nos hagan lo que quieran, sino que nosotros tenemos un costo político. And that is the most important thing to me right now, even though we have to keep doing the work in the grassroots level, we have to keep with the education, with the la capacitación, we have to keep pushing communication, las redes sociales, we have to do that. But if we do not have political power, if we do not turn into a real force, we will not see change. That is what I believe.
Okay, no, and I understand that, right? But I'm sure that here, like, back in the States, los políticos dicen una cosa, comunican una cosa, la plataforma, this is their platform, and then, once they're elected, and then the truth, hits, it's like all of a sudden it all just dissipates, it disappears. Okay. So I like what you're saying, that, mobilizing women, right, and men, everybody, to ensure that whoever is elected is true to their word about the rights of women and children.
We had to create some kind of system where you can really be how do you say, be responsible for what you promise. And
that's right.
It has to somehow. And people...
Tener consecuencias, right?
Claro,
you have to
consecuencias. Y la gente progresista, people who believe in human rights, and people that want to really do change, has to get involved into politics.
Yeah.
Okay, we cannot leave it only to those old politicians, and we have to push, and that's I think that's one of the responsibility of the feminist movement, and you can see it in the region. You have seen it in Latin America, how the women are crucial to what happened in Chile. It's crucial to what happened in Argentina. It's crucial to what happened in Colombia. So we women have to take that torch and push, because otherwise it will take us way too long.
Yeah, no, agreed. So I want to ask you a question about, the impact of international politics on what happens here in the Dominican Republic. But before I go there, I wanted to ask you specifically about the pandemic. We're slowly, I don't want to say moving out of the pandemic, porque la realidad es que va a continuar, ¿verdad? Esto va a seguir, right? Unless we look at climate change and everything else. But
yeah,
I'll leave that in right here for now. En la esquinita, lo dejo aquí.
What is the next pandemic?
Exacto.
Yeah.
Like that's the reality, right? La realidad es que viene otro y tenemos que estar preparados. Like I'm curious about the impact that you have seen that the pandemic has had on women and children, and what has been the real response of the government aquí en República Dominicana to allay some of those concerns, but also and fears, but also to help support women and children throughout the pandemic.
The government's response in the Dominican Republic has been as the same response as most of the government, to try to alleviate some of the economic problems by giving them the transfers of money, food. It's always what government does, just to give them to supply the immediate problem, but no, the real problem they can change. We are like I said, in the gender technologies, it's very little what the government is doing in order to make sure that the population have access to the right technology in order to better their life, in order to communicate better, in order to do more business. Even though I know there's some instances where actually feminists are at the head, where we are doing um, some work that I believe that is really will be able to help in order for people to use more technology or have more access to. But it's really you can see it in the use of technology. There's nothing new about access to health in the Dominican Republic. It's the same thing. There's nothing new about the pandemic have taught us how the whole system will stop.
Yeah.
And you see the justice system is still the same thing. I was just the other day. I was a witness for a case, and we had to stay there from 8 in the morning to 2 in the afternoon, 4 in the afternoon. I think it was not two, and the case was thrown to another day, to just 3 weeks later. But there were women there that came from San Juan, which is 3 hours drive. She has no way of coming back. She has no way of staying here. So you have, she didn't have any help, then she wouldn't have be able to come back and go. But that was just this case. And this happens all the time to women with their own, who are victim of domestic violence. And they sit in the same courtroom with a man sitting beside her, telling her whatever, and nothing, and the system is not able to see that this is happening, and because of the pandemic, see a new way of doing it through
Right.
technology, is not able to move with the necessary uh, fastness, I guess. And but also like I said before, the priorities about gender equality are not real to the men governing this
Mm.
country, because men are governing this country. As you can see, we have un gobierno que tiene dos ministras.
Sí.
Dos ministras. One in women, una en el Ministerio de la Mujer y una en el Ministerio de Cultura. That's it. And and even then, o sea, we sit in CIPAF, we sit in a table for digital transformation, and, and when you see their plans, you see, oh, these are really everything that you have here. It has to be done.
Right.
Yeah, there's nothing uh, that I'm not, how do you say, que yo no estoy de acuerdo con eso. But and then they say to you, okay, this is my plan, and my plan is for the better, to better the life of the people. And I go back to this. When you go back and you see it, you see, where is the people in this plan? Where where are the women?
Right.
We are 51%. We are 51% of the Dominican population. We are also, la cara de la pobreza en República Dominicana es la cara de una mujer. Do- ¿Dónde están los planes para esas mujeres en esta transformación digital? Cuando nosotras vamos a ser las mayores afectadas por la transformación digital. Because of, los trabajos de las mujeres son los trabajos que más rápido se van a perder por la automatización y la inteligencia artificial y todo eso. But when you see their plan, you see, but what you're thinking, it has nothing to do with what you are doing. So
Right.
this will not help. That is not one of these great programs that will help women. And then
Mm.
you have to keep, well, you have to tell them and tell them and tell them until they'll finally give in to you, just because this woman tells, o sea, esta mujer está molestosa y tan necia,
Sí.
but it's not because they really uh, understand the problem, and,
It's
and
not. It's not will. It's not their
no, no,
own
no,
will.
no, I don't
No.
think so. And you can see it because que no te invitan a otras cosas.
Ah,
They get to you, you tell them, and then, sí, 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 pa, y lo ponen ahí. But when they are doing them, when they are doing the projects, when they are really developing the projects, when they are financing the projects, there's no women on the table.
una pregunta, continuing with this a little bit. ¿Cómo ves tú que influye, por ejemplo, los gobiernos internacionales, right? So I know that, the United Nations, that República Dominicana is part of it and is part of, the United Women's, I forget that, the ministry.
UN, yeah.
Yeah, of the UN. How, if at all, are, Human Rights Watch and the UN and other nations and, their movement, por ejemplo, aquí en la región latinoamericana, right? All of the things that is happening in Chile, como dijiste, en Colombia, etc. Like, is any of that impacting, government at all, their thinking, la política, o no ves ningún movimiento, nada?
Sí, claro, porque las leyes que están ahora es para cumplir con todo ese marco internacional
Sí.
que UN and the other world organization has pushed. And they know the government that either they put it on paper or they won't get the financial they need. But once the financial is here, then you do whatever you have to accept what you're supposed to be doing.
Pero son listos, entonces.
Claro que sí. O sea, ahora mismo todo el mundo quiere trabajar con organizaciones, todo el mundo financiero quiere trabajar con organizaciones de mujeres. ¿Por qué? Porque saben que a nivel internacional el financiamiento llega más fácil if you work with gender, en trabajo de paridad en tu oficina, el trabajo de paridad en tu organización. But there's really 2 or 3 real industry that really believe and that making sure that you have equality inside the workforce will make you more money, because at the end, as that is what it is, or will make more access, will give more access for women, and then you will run better your company. But the other ones are just fulfilling, the gaps in order to get this or that certificate or this or that financial access.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's what it is. It's really that's sad. So that's
That is,
why we have to change.
yeah.
Yo no quiero decir que no hay compañías que sí hacen porque lo creen. Okay, hay gente que sí cree en lo que está haciendo,
Sí.
¿verdad? Pero la mayoría es just.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
Mm-hmm.
Una pregunta sobre LGBTQIA. So, in the States, for example, I noticed that there's a bifurcation, right? There's women's rights, right? And then there's like LGBTQ, right? So es así, divididos. Pero para mí es necesaria la unidad.
Así es.
Así es, ¿verdad? Entonces, like, ¿cómo ves tú, cómo incluyes tú de parte de CIPAF a esa comunidad, a esa población, in like the movement, in the thinking about, gender equity? Have you had an opportunity to really engage, that community aquí en la República Dominicana?
Well, everything has its up and down. And el Código Penal, lo que ha pasado en el Congreso, has helped, in my view, to unify both the women movement and the LGBT community. And we have work. You have seen it in our latest manifestation in March and mobilization, that we are working together. And still, we believe that if you are a feminist, you have to support the LGBTQ plus community. I mean, there is no way uh, that if you are looking for equality and respect diversity, you will not be able to understand and support the movement. Although we believe that the LGBTQ community has their agenda and
Mhm.
it should be pushed by them, but it always should have our support in every way we can. And that's what we do through CIPAF. Any way we can do things together, work together, give support to each other as a movement, we are there.
Thank you for sharing that, because you're right. It's super important. You can't you can't believe in the rights of one group and not believe in the rights of
No,
another. Like it
no.
has to be all, right? It has to be an inclusive society. We all have a responsibility to each other, right? That is part of
Yes.
the values that I was raised with, you know.
Yeah.
Y eso es los valores de la comunidad latina. Entonces, como que se le escapa a veces, pero yo pienso que son influencias, de la iglesia. The church has a role to play in that. And I also think, that there's a role of white supremacy and the impact of colonization, right? Across across all nations globally. So, vamos a regresar un poquito a lo personal.
Hmm.
Similar to me, you're a mother of two young men now. I have two young boys still. Tell me, I am raising my boys, and both my husband and I can't just take all the credit, and my family, to really understand the importance of human rights, right? We talk about what childism is. We talk about their rights as children. We talk about women's rights. We talk about, poverty and all of those things. And so my goal is to raise them to be, thoughtful, inclusive, appreciative young men, right? Who have a really global understanding of the world and the role that they should play in it, right? And so I'm curious, now that your sons are now older, in their 20s and 30s, um, how has the experience of motherhood shaped your thinking about the work that you do, and has how has your work influenced how you have raised your children?
It's a great question. I haven't thought about it really. Um, because my kids were, because we were surrounded by this diverse family, this different family. I think my kids, both of them, uh, since the beginning were since they were little. We lived in Cuba for a long time,
Mm,
and they live in Canada too, and they live in the Dominican Republic. So they were privileged to see different people, different systems, and 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 to grow up in a family where women and men were totally equal in whatever they could do or could not do, and the laws were made for everybody, uh,
yeah.
no matter what your gender was. So, como te dije anteriormente, uno no se da cuenta del privilegio o de sus privilegios dentro de una familia así. Eh, Hasta que no tiene un choque como yo tuve cuando entré a CIPAF y
Sí.
tuve que ver otras naciones. Entonces mis hijos no fueron, ¿cómo digo? Ya, cuando ya yo entro a CIPAF, ya ellos estaban influidos por su abuela,
Sí, sí, sí.
su abuelo. O sea, my kids used to go to march with Fafa and used to go to march with Magaly. They have to go. It was your responsibility. It was something that you have to do
Yeah.
and the family in order to support whatever your grandmother was doing or your grandfather was doing, because but also because it was right,
Exacto.
because
Exacto.
that's what you do. So
Yeah.
that way we didn't plan it. We, now that they're older, they don't got as much to, but they're always supportive. They always understand. Um, they live, both of my kids, I think, live a very inclusive life, and respectful of others. And we don't expect either of them to follow, their grandfather path or my path or my husband path, but I know that whatever they will do or they decide to do, they will think always of how they can better whatever they get in, but they can live better.
Yeah.
And it, that's what you have to believe anyway.
Yeah. No, I mean, obviously, I know both of your sons well.
Yeah.
He compartido con ambos. And I mean, it's just a pleasure. They are open-minded. They're gifted and talented in their own way, and
Yeah.
are have wonderful global perspective. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is what I want for my kids. So good job to all of you for
Well, it was a
effort.
era una comunidad, una
Sí,
comunidad,
sí,
la familia, los primos, la familia, todo.
exacto,
We it always
exacto.
been that way. And I think that's what you have to do with your kids. You try to give them as much as you can for them to you know pa- para captar y para oír y para that's all you have to be able to give it the right to understand and to be able to say, okay, this is right and this is wrong, and that ese pensar críticamente, yo creo que es lo más
Exacto,
importante que tú le puedes dar a
exacto,
tus hijos, porque
sí,
ellos y ellas podrán definir o decidir.
exacto. Celebrar lo independiente que son, ¿verdad? Like the
Sí,
opportunity for them to be critical thinkers, but
yes,
independent thinkers that can
yep.
make decisions, related to what's right and what's wrong, and for themselves, right? And shape a world that is just.
Tú sabes que todos los muchachos y las muchachas siempre tendrán ese momento donde no quieren hacer lo contrario de
Sí,
lo,
claro.
you know. So, lo único que tú puedes hacer es
No,
tener,
ya está
darle,
llegando la adolescencia, entonces ya ha llegado el
ya,
momento.
ya ha llegado el momento. No, lo único que tú puedes hacer es haberle dado las herramientas para que pueda saber bien
Exacto.
qué es y cómo y qué es lo que realmente vale y qué es lo que realmente
Sí,
ellos quieren hacer
sí.
o
Pero
eso.
lo que dijiste ahorita es clave, y eso yo digo a cada rato, que la responsabilidad de criar a los hijos no solamente le llega a la madre, sino es una responsabilidad de la familia y de la comunidad, right?
Así
Where
es.
it's community, right? And that goes back to our ancestral values, that it was the community together
Yep.
that raises children. Um,
My kids live 2 years with 2 years, 2 or 3 years with their grandfather and their grandmother here. And I think it's because I was working too much. I was
yeah,
traveling a lot. So my mother say, just leave them here.
yeah,
And it's like, you go like, oh, I have to leave my kids, all that. But it was the best thing that happened to them. And they were able to work to know their grandparents more and their grandmother and to do what, so that shaped them. And then we had to travel and they had to be here and they had to see different realities, and I think it's shaped them for good.
yeah,
I hope.
yeah. No, that's wonderful. See that. So before we leave our drum circle today, I want to ask you one, maybe two last questions.
Okay.
Um, the first one is, what are your macro and then micro dreams for the future of women and children in the Dominican Republic. So that's number one. And then the second one is, what do you want to encourage our listeners, nuestra audiencia que te está escuchando en este momento? How would you encourage them to be part of the movement aquí en la República Dominicana?
I think I'm going to answer them both in Spanish.
No, dale.
Okay. La primera pregunta, ¿qué yo quiero ver en la República Dominicana? Yo quiero ver una República Dominicana donde se respeten las libertades, donde se respeten la diferencia, donde la gente del pueblo dominicano tiene la mayor cantidad de oportunidades a su disposición, no importa de dónde venga, donde no haya racismo, donde no se promueva el odio, donde el respeto a nuestros hermanos haitianos sea la norma, donde las mujeres, yo quiero ver una mujer presidenta, pero no cualquier mujer presidenta, yo quiero ver una mujer presidenta que esté comprometida con los derechos humanos y con la igualdad y la diversidad, no cualquier mujer. Hace muchos años nosotras promovíamos que todas las mujeres participaran. Yo no quiero ver a todas las mujeres participando. Yo quiero ver a las mujeres pro derechos, con respeto, llegando a lugares de poder, porque todas las demás también serán beneficiadas. No es discriminación y en este caso, pero es que yo creo que solamente con una persona con la capacidad de entender que hay que tener respeto por la diversidad, que los estados tienen que ser laicos, que la mujer y el hombre tienen que tener los mismos derechos realmente, es lo que nos va a beneficiar a todas y todos. Ese es mi macro. Mi micro sería que logremos, el movimiento feminista dominicano logre cohesionarse y empezar a crecer e involucrarse más políticamente. Eso sería como mi base para lograr lo otro.
Okay.
Y la otra pregunta me hiciste, ahora ¿me puedes repetir? La otra fue...
Por ejemplo, ¿qué te gustaría que nuestra audiencia, en qué manera pueden participar?
Mira,
what do you encourage them to do?
Okay. When you go back 40 years and you take a newspaper in the Dominican Republic, you can see the same problems that we are having now. We have advanced a little bit, but it's still the same problem. Education, access to water. The only thing new in this 40 years is I believe, is climate change and el tema medioambiental.
Sí.
Pero lo único nuevo sobre ese tema es que le pusimos un nombre, porque los mismos problemas con el tema del estrabismo, los mismos problemas con la polución, habían hace 40 años. Tenemos una clase gobernante que ha venido los últimos 40 años, la misma, atravesándolo todo,
Sí.
haciéndonos cambios mínimos y tú no hay un avance real, es lo mismo. Cuando tú lo ves, tú vas a decir, son los mismos problemas que seguimos. Entonces, la República Dominicana tiene que, we have to get involved. We have to, whatever is your political thinking, you have to get involved. We have to take responsibility as a country, as the people of this country, to make a change, real change. Okay, and that change can only happen when everybody is included, when everybody has the same right, when everybody has at least, if not the same opportunity, because I believe that We have not been able to build a system where everybody has the same opportunities,
Right.
but we have to at least recognize that that is our goal. And the only way to do that is to get involved, not to just sit en las redes sociales, pero realmente
Exactly.
involucrarse,
Yeah.
realmente, digo, las redes sociales son muy importantes y en mucho lo que la gente puede hacer, pero hay que involucrarse, hay que bajar a las comunidades, hay que hablar en tu iglesia, hay que hablar en tu colegio, hay que hablar en tu universidad, con tus compañeras. Y ese cambio tiene que ser un cambio no para mi beneficio. We have to stop with that individuality. La promoción de la individualidad tiene que, bueno, que tener un límite y tenemos que conocer de ese límite. Y because otherwise we will, 40 years from now, sadly, we'll stay the same.
Yeah. We wanna shift that. We wanna
Yeah.
move the needle.
Yes, we have to.
We have to move the needle.
Esto que tú haces comunicando es muy importante, sobre todo porque podemos escuchar, yo he escuchado algunos de los podcasts y uno va conociendo de otra experiencia. Para mí ha sido muy importante en los últimos meses poder vivir un poco de lo que está pasando en América Latina. Para abrir la cabeza, pero también para relacionarse, porque como tú dices, somos una comunidad, pero no solamente una comunidad de familias, sino una comunidad global en América Latina, y yo creo que América Latina está caminando hacia el camino correcto y hacia el camino donde vamos a empezar a dejar cosas atrás, y eso es importante, que nosotros como personas que vivimos en una isla podamos sentirnos integrados también a nivel.
Sí, Syra, muchísimas gracias. No, sinceramente, aprecio mucho que compartiste hoy con nosotros. Thank you so much for joining us. To all of you watching and listening, I leave you with a quote from Michelle Obama, which is, "No country can ever truly flourish if it stifles the potential of its women and deprives itself of the contributions of half of its citizens." So think about that. Thanks again for listening to Tambora Dialogues, and thank you to our guest, Syra Taveras Pineda. We'll see you all next time in the Drum Circle. Take care, everyone. Hasta luego. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest from us, you can follow us on Instagram at Tambora Dialogues and on Twitter at Tambora Dialogue 1. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time in the Drum Circle.